Good morning, students. Happy Thursday. I'm glad to be with you here. I'm working on getting your essay tests graded, and hopefully that went well for you. I appreciate everybody who took the time to really put in effort and upload those for me. So now World War I has ended, and the Treaty of Versailles was signed in 1919 in the summer, and there's going to be some economic downturns. So what I want to really focus on this chapter is going to go pretty quick. Two things. Basically, the Depression worldwide. It's in the United States, but it's also in Europe and other areas. And then the rise of Hitler and Stalin. And we're going to kind of compare and look at those two dictators and their regimes. So I'm going to scale this down as much as possible, but there's a couple things that I want to get to before we even finish up this chapter. Now keep in mind, the Treaty of Versailles ends in 1919, and if you know anything about history, World War II officially begins in 1939. So that means we have about 20 years of history that we're going to have to get through. And because of the Treaty of Versailles, a lot of things are going to happen that affects basically the start of World War I, and that's what we need to get to in this chapter. So there's going to be a build-up to the Great Depression. Please watch that YouTube video. It's called the 5-Minute History, so it's a really short video. I don't really want to play it here for you all the way through because that takes up a lot of your bandwidth, a lot of your space. So take a look at that YouTube video that I've embedded. Also, I'd like you to read page 352 to 355. I'm having some problems with the digital book, so I'm just going to post like a PDF of those pages over on the right-hand side of the column. So read page 352 to 355. One thing that I will have you look at here, right there. So this is the interactive book. And the first page of this, and you can see the years 1919 to 1939, the West in between the wars. This is a picture of what's called Hitler Youth. Boys in the Hitler Youth participated in Nazi rallies and activities where they spent time with other children and with minimum parental guidance. This photograph was taken circa around 1939. If you take a look at that picture, some of those boys look very young. They look quite young. As you look back into the crowd, some of them obviously look a little older. Some of them look like adult men. But the point was that you could, Hitler was able to brainwash and get people to follow him. He was very charismatic, and this was essentially like kind of like a Boy Scout club, Hitler Youth, where they taught you to be independent, but they also taught you discipline. They taught you to be resourceful, and they gave you a place where you felt accepted. And then they started to kind of brainwash you. Now that's nothing like the Boy Scouts, but the idea of camaraderie and fostering these skills, these life skills to be resourceful and independent are what Hitler was able to do. So this is the period of time that we're talking about. Okay. So Germany is forced to pay some reparations. And last chapter we talked about that word reparations. Reparations are what Germany had to pay for their role in the war. They not only had to take responsibility for the war, but they had to pay a lot of money. And they couldn't. Germany was absolutely destroyed, probably not as bad as France was, but Germany was really destroyed, both geographically and economically. And so the German economy goes bankrupt. They go into this period called hyperinflation. And if you take a look at this, I'm not sure if you can tell, but this is a German woman. And do you see what she's doing right there? She is burning German marks. She's burning money. Those are like dollar bills. They're called marks. And in order to heat her stove and cook her food, she's burning the money. That's how worthless. The money was more valuable to burn as wood than it was to use as payment, because they were going through this severe hyperinflation where everything costs a lot of money. Part of the Treaty of Versailles said that they had to have a republic. They had to have a government by the people. Kaiser Wilhelm II is forced out, and they have to create a government that the people get to have a say and have an election. So the Weimar, of course it looks like a W, but is pronounced the Weimar. The Weimar Republic is created after the war, but all of Germany is in an economic crisis. Now, to kind of help, because remember, the United States was probably the most eager to help the rest of the world rebuild, because we were affected the least. We were not so angry about the way the World War I transpired. But we do see this as kind of an economic opportunity for us. So there was a man named Dawes, and he comes up with the Dawes Plan. It essentially said, okay, we are going to loan money, we, the United States, are going to loan money to Germany. Germany is then going to pay back, they're going to pay their reparations to France and Great Britain, the winners, right? So the United States is going to loan money to Germany. Germany is going to use that money to pay France and Britain for the reparations that was signed in the Treaty of Versailles. And then France and Great Britain is going to use that money to pay back the United States for the things that they essentially bought, the supplies and materials that they bought in World War I. Remember, those first few years of the war, the United States wanted to stay out of the war, but we were selling Europe, the Allies, lots of materials. Well, we sold them that on without actually paying for it. So this was part of the Dawes Plan, and it worked. It worked pretty well after the Treaty of Versailles, until the Great Depression hit the U.S. And once the Great Depression hit the U.S., then it didn't work so well for the United States, and the whole system kind of collapsed. So there is a Great Depression worldwide. Now, it's already started to be felt in Europe, because Europe is still trying to recoup their losses and rebuild after the war. But when the Great Depression hits in the United States, the rest of the rest of the world goes into a downward spiral. In fact, if you want to make some comparisons today, the United States right now, we are in an economic downturn because of the coronavirus, and it is affecting all worldwide trade. The United States in this time period became a superpower in trading. In fact, they have been for a few decades already, but in the 20s, there's a reason they called it the Roaring 20s. So there's a whole host of reasons why the United States goes into an economic downturn. When you watch that video, the biggest thing that you're going to see is probably speculation on the stock market. People are thinking the stock market is going to go higher and higher and higher and higher. There's things called buying on margin. There's an overproduction of farm products, especially like wheat. There were problems with the banks. There's high unemployment rates. So there's many, many factors that the United States goes into an economic downturn. But it all kind of comes to a head. It all is revealed of how bad the economic situation is on October 29th, 1929. This is called Black Tuesday, and it's the U.S. stock market crash. When you get into U.S. history next year, you'll talk about this a lot more, But Black Tuesday happens and it sends the world, not only the United States, the world, into a tailspin. So massive volumes of stocks are sold, leading to a market crash. If you've been following the stock markets at all at this time, we have had some of the biggest losses. Actually, we might have had the biggest loss since the crash of 1929. So it is affecting Germany, France, Great Britain, and the United States. All these places. If you see that woman over on the left, this is a famous, famous picture. It's called Migrant Mother. It's by a woman named Dorothea Lange. And, this mom right here, she's actually only like 33 years old, but she's got children and she's got this look like, how am I going to feed these kids, And because of the Great Depression worldwide, there's a renewed sense of interest in communism and Marxism. Remember, communism is when the means of production are owned by or controlled by the people, and it's distributed by a dictator. And so it seems like it's so perfect. When everything else is crashing down around us, it seems like, okay, now this is the way to level the playing field. This is the way to make people equal. This mom shouldn't have to suffer and wonder how she's going to feed her kids when there's some fat cat 3 blocks away who doesn't have a worry in the world about feeding their children. And so there's a big interest in communism again, and especially Marxism, Karl Marx's theory that he proposed in the Communist Manifesto. So the only thing I need you to do then by Friday at 6 p.m., I've got another writing prompt. This is really the only way I can truly analyze if you're understanding the information being taught. So I'd like you to answer that short writing prompt on the Depression and how a depression will affect democracies. So think about this slide right here. Talk to you later. Miss you guys. Bye.